Today we are going to see how this L cylinder works. First of all, the L cylinder is a part of the robot of our automated planter Futura, and it allows the trolley to move up and down. So basically to move the tray where the plants are towards the bottom of the machine. This L cylinder includes oil and air. When the cylinder is closed, the rod is completely inside the cylinder, we have oil all the way from here to here and air from the bottom of this part to the top. As you can see, here we have an entry for the air. In this part, in this section, we're going to have an air tube arriving here and another air tube is arriving here. In this area we have spring that allow the oil to pass or to stop, and an electric valve. Now the cylinder works like that. When the air is arriving from this side, there is a piston here pushing this way. The spring moves so that the oil can pass through this section and the rod moves up. When we want to go down, we inject air from this side, and in this case the electric valve is opening and the air goes down, the oil that was here goes down as well, and we move back into the initial position. Piston here, oil here all the way, air here all the way.
When we have a problem with the cylinder, we need to open it. So the first thing you need to do before opening the cylinder is to place it in a vise, like this one. It would be better to place a cloth around the cylinder, because otherwise all the oil will make everything dirty, and also to avoid damages to the sides of the cylinder while the cylinder is inside the device. It's very important to put the cylinder, to place the cylinder inside the device exactly in the position you are seeing now. So the shorter part is inside the device and the longer part is outside, exactly like you are seeing it in this very moment. Now let's start from one of the most common problems we can have with this cylinder. When we see that the tray is not moving down perfectly, I mean the tray is not stopping aligned with the fingers, it might be a problem due to what we have inside here, the spring and the little tab. Now we are going to open it. Okay, you see that inside we have a little tap and also a spring. Now with the movement up and down all the time, the spring sometimes is damaging this little tap. When the tap is damaged, a little bit of oil can leak and go backwards into the big part of the cylinder. So what you can do the first time is to turn the tap the other way around, like this. Problem solved for a while. If in case after hours and hours of work you have that problem again, then it means it's time to replace that part, the little tab. Another problem we can have inside the cylinder is missing oil. When some oil is missing, the rod that is coming out from this side might not go all the way out. So what we have to do is to open the cylinder and to refill it. Now, usually the main reason why we might have a problem of oil, missing oil, is because the gaskets that are inside the cylinder might not be in good condition. Now, the first thing we need to do is to take off the 4 screws that are on the top. Once we have the 4 screws removed, we can take off the longer part of the cylinder. Now, be careful because it doesn't come up by pulling straight. You need to move it gently up and down for a little while, and then it comes off. Now, you see that in this case there is a little bit of oil missing inside the cylinder. The result we want to obtain is to have oil nearly until the border here. We just need to leave empty 1 centimeter starting from the top. The oil we put inside is ATF red oil, and now we're gonna refill it. You see that we left just a little bit, something between 1 and 1.5 centimeter free, and the rest completely filled with oil. Now, the other thing we need to do is to double check all the gaskets. The first gasket we are checking is the big one. It is between the narrower part of the L cylinder and the bigger part of the L cylinder. We clean the oil, the residues of the oil, and then very carefully we double check that the gasket is in good condition. We need to check whether there are scratches or any sort of damage somewhere around the gasket. In case we find that the gasket is damaged, we need to remove it. We can use a little screwdriver to help. We take it off, and then we put a new one back on. Always being very careful in order to avoid damages to this very thin part. Every time we put a new gasket on, very important to put a little bit of grease around, because the new gasket is always very dry, and if we don't do this, the gasket for sure will be damaged. We move forward to the second step. Now we need to remove other screws in order to double check other gaskets. We start with these 2 screws that are holding this plate. Then we can remove the other 4 screws that are holding the base. When the screws are off, the longer part of the cylinder, always very gently, will come off. As you can see, in the area where the longer part of the cylinder was, there is the second gasket. Now we apply the same procedure as before. We clean it with a cloth or a piece of paper, and then very carefully we double check that the gasket is in good condition. If not, we replace it.
Togliamo.
We take it off with a little screwdriver. Then we put a new one on. New one. Very carefully. And then we grease it. Put a little bit of grease. Very important. Don't forget to do this. Now the other thing we need to do is to double check the third gasket that is on the top of the long part of the cylinder. Obviously we need to remove these 4 screws that you can see here. Then we take the top off, always very gently. The rod is coming completely out. And here you can see we have 2 additional gaskets. We clean everything. We double check them whether they are good or not. In this position, on the top of the rod, there are 2 gaskets. The one on the top is the one for the oil, and the one on the bottom is the one for the air. Now, when we see that they are damaged, either one or both of them, first of all we need to remove this net that is on the top. To do that, we place in the vise the rod, we lock it, and then we undo the net. Tira via la cosa. Before we need to clean everything, obviously. The gasket where to stop the oil can be replaced. Here you can see the little gasket. And the air one. As you can see here, there are in total 4 gaskets. 2 little ones, 1 and 2, and then two big ones, number 1 and number 2. The little ones can be easily replaced. Guardi per piccolo.
La tolgo?
Sì, sì. Venuti. Prendo quello. When you have a problem with this one, you can replace the whole part, including the plastic. And when you have a problem with this one, the one for the oil, you need to replace only the black gaskets. You see, this is not that easy, but can be done. It's very thick, so it's not that easy to take it off. Then you put back the new one. Once you have all the gaskets replaced, you can put them back. Be careful with the small one. We put our nut back where it was. And then don't forget to grease. Another problem that might occur is oil leaking from this section here. In this case, you need to replace the old part. Again, you need to remove the net. You take off the two gaskets and you take off this part. You put back the new one. The last gaskets we need to double check are the two gaskets that are on the piston. Now you can see that they are not identical. The one on the left hand side will be the one for air, that is a little bit softer. The one on the right hand side is the one for oil, that is a little bit thicker. Obviously, to double check these two gaskets, you need to get rid of the oil that is inside the cylinder. Obviously you can use it again, so you can refill it afterwards with the same oil. Once the oil is off, the only way to take off the piston from the cylinder is to inject air from here with an air tube. The piston will come off from here. You can take it. You can double check the two gaskets. Before doing that, obviously you need to clean it. You clean. If they are bad, you need to remove them as we did before. You take them off and then back, and then you put them back. You do the same thing for the second one, and then once you have done that, you put the grease. You put the grease on both sides. Then the gasket, the piston is ready to be installed again inside the cylinder. Pay attention always to have the air gasket on the left hand side, the oil gasket on the right hand side. Very important. Another part that can be replaced on this cylinder is the electrical valve. When the valve is broken, it's very easy to replace it. You need to undo the 4 screws on the sides. Valve is off, and then you put a new one on. The very last part is to put the cylinder back in position. The only thing you need to remember is that when you connect the longer part to the shorter part, we need to open a little bit this screw here, because otherwise it's impossible to fit the longer part into the shorter one. Let's do it. Now, if we do this, we open a little bit, very gently, we put it back, and then we close. And then we start again to fit all the screws that we took off earlier.